Now, we're contradicting a report which said that Indian government has directed officials and leaders to stay away from the Dalai Lama events. The Ministry of External Affairs has clarified, saying that there is no change in the position on the Tibetan spiritual leader. Now, the Ministry of External Affairs statement said, and I quote, "The government of India's position on His Holiness the Dalai Lama is clear and consistent. He is a revered religious leader and is deeply respected by the people of India. There is no change in that position. His Holiness is accorded all freedom to carry out his religious activities in India." Now, earlier, an Indian daily had reported that the government has advised its officials to stay away from events hosted for Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama, citing a very sensitive time for bilateral relations with China. All right, now for more on this, we're joined in by our political affairs editor, Kartikeya Sharma. Kartikeya, this is an interesting bit of a development that has come. There were reports which suggested that perhaps there was an effort by the Indian government to try not get Indian officials to take part in the events of Dalai Lama, but now the Ministry of External Affairs has given out this clarification. How do you read this development?
See, the clarification itself is very, very clear. The clarification says that, we will allow Dalai Lama to do its own program. But the story was about whether Indian government or the people who represent Indian government will be associated with it or not. I don't think so they will be associated. So the story stands correct. Nowhere in the clarification they have denied that the letter has not been written. Nowhere in the clarification they have denied that no ministers will continue to meet Dalai Lama. Nowhere the clarification takes up the issue that Indian government will proactively engage with Dalai Lama. I think what has happened is that this was an internal communication which out of sheer good journalism is in public domain, and it makes it two things very, very, very clear. If there is no realism in public mood or nationalism-inspired constituencies, but there is realism in Modi government.
Right.
And the realism is that China is emerging as a superpower under the new dispensation, with third term going to Xi Jinping, and it has to be acknowledged. And Indian statecraft needs its own recalibration in order to engage China.
Right.
Look what has happened. In Maldives, China has opened a base and India has not said a word. So China is trying to curtail India. But the fact of the matter is, the strength difference between India and China is vast, but India is the only power which stands next to China when it comes to Asia. So the issue is that India wants to keep a policy of its own autonomy, of its own independent Indo-Pacific region without provoking China. I would say the text of the message is, do not provoke China.
Okay. Kartikeya, but interestingly, last year in the month of April, Dalai Lama visited Arunachal Pradesh. This was something that was very strongly objected to by China. But India said that Dalai Lama is a guest in India and he is free to travel throughout the length and breadth of the country. Do you think there is going to be a change in terms of that posturing by India with respect to China?
I think the India-China relationships are over tough posturing because, the China's wait-and-watch policy is over. China is expanding. China has actually converted the loose reefs into a military base in South China Sea. It is about to create a base in Maldives.
Right.
So China is all over Asia. China is a reality which we Americans have accepted it. That is why Americans, the so-called forced projection in Asia has weakened over a period of time. But saying that, I would say, bottom line here is that the government is being pragmatic. You see, that's the point I want to make. Even if the political constituency charged with supporting BJP goes into a hyperbole, it shows at least the government is not in a hyperbole mood. There is a sense of realism in Modi administration,
right.
But China should not be provoked. And I think that's a fair play. Dalai Lama gets his autonomy in this country, which has a position on Tibet, but it cannot. The Indian government feels that it cannot be at the cost of provoking a giant neighbor, which is useless. So I think in that context, I don't see any point of weakness in the letter. As a lot of nationalists would say, there's a point of weakness. There is no point of weakness. It's drenched in hard realism.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Kartikeya Sharma, for having joined us and given us that very interesting input. So India has said it's very clear its position on Dalai Lama is consistent.